Call to order and roll call. Agenda item number 1, the October 9th, 2023 Audit Oversight Committee is called to order. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Chair Seaman?
Here.
Vice Chair Price?
Here.
Member Gahn?
Here.
Member Allen Polinsky?
Present.
Member Karcher?
Present.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 2. Agenda item number 2, announcement regarding compliance with open meeting law. City clerk, has the meeting been noticed, posted in compliance with the open meeting law?
Yes, it has. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is public comment. Comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion as well as the amount of any time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. Is there anyone wishing to be heard at this time? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion and we'll move on to agenda item number 4. For possible action to approve the final minutes by reference of the regular meeting of July 10th, 2023. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Please post. The motion carries. Let's move on to item number 5. Agenda item number 5, discussion for possible action on Audit Oversight Committee quarterly meeting dates for calendar year 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
The following dates have been proposed for holding the quarterly Audit Oversight Committee meetings in 2024. January 8th, 2024, April 8th, 2024, July 8th, 2024, October 7th, 2024. All of these meetings will be held at 10 a.m. Do I have a motion to accept the date and time?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve it.
There's a motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Please post. The motion carries. Moving on to, well, let me see if the motion carries. Moving on to item number 6. Agenda item number 6, report by staff regarding follow-up on unaccounted for gift cards. Joseph Thornberry, Senior Forensic Auditor, will be providing this report. Please begin, Mr. Thornberry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe Thornberry, Senior Forensic Auditor, for the record. During the October 2022 Audit Committee meeting, questions from Audit Committee members focused on gift cards that were not accounted for, potentially lost or stolen, following the presentation of the audit reports on gift card controls and policy compliance within the Departments of Neighborhood Services, Municipal Court, Parks and Recreation and Cultural Affairs, and Youth Development and Social Initiatives. City Auditor Rad Snelding advised the Audit Committee that our office would conduct additional follow-up to determine the status of those gift cards and, if signs of potential fraud, waste, or abuse were present, take appropriate action. Following up on the Department of Neighborhood Services, the most significant number of unaccounted for gift cards identified during the audit, 117 gift cards valued at $4,095, were those purchased with city funds by city employees using their P cards at local Walmart stores in May of 2020. These gift cards were purchased as incentives for individuals to obtain COVID testing under the city's Isolation Quarantine Initiative, also known as ISOQ, with the Neighborhood Service Director approving the gift card purchases. Over the several months earlier this year, I had the opportunity to review the audit reports and corresponding documentation provided by each department in finance. In addition, contact was made with the affiliated merchants to ask for current balances and transaction history on unaccounted for gift cards. The results of this review for neighborhood services are as follows. 117 gift cards were found to be unaccounted for during the original gift card audit. Out of those 117 gift cards, all but 10 had been used based on Walmart's balance and transactional data history. Out of the 107 gift cards used, items purchased were consistent with all other gift card distribution, and transaction data showed the cards were used to purchase food, beverage, hygiene, and other merchandise consistent with individual non-resale use. Walmart provided additional transactional details and activity on approximately 600 gift cards, which allowed for comparison and possible outlier detection. Based on this review, no theft fraud patterns were identified, and purchases matched what would reasonably be expected based on overall transaction history. While the possibility of individual theft or misuse of any gift cards cannot be eliminated due to poor internal controls at the time, no major theft patterns were identified as part of the review. Moving on to the municipal court. The results of the review for the municipal court as follows. Between May 2017 and March of 2023, municipal court purchased 1,422 gift cards from various merchants. 1,116 were distributed to court program recipients, and 294 were still on hand as of the court self-audit count conducted in March of 2023. 12 gift cards totaling $274.50 remain unaccounted for in documentation in these 6 years and did not link to any specific court program, merchant, and/or custodian. The follow-up review did not identify patterns indicative of theft or fraud to the gift cards under review. No significant loss pattern tied to any one individual, custodian, merchant, or court program. Gift cards where merchants provided usage data did not suggest internal misappropriation. As with the review of neighborhood services, while the possibility of internal or individual theft or misuse of any gift card cannot be eliminated, no theft patterns were identified as part of the review. Moving on to Parks and Recreation. The results of the review for Parks and Recreation Department are as follows. The Parks audit identified 120 gift cards totaling $2,664 purchased by Parks in 15 transactions from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th of 2021. Of the 120 gift cards, 62 were recorded within Park documentation. 58 gift cards were not recorded in any documentation. Out of those 58 gift cards, 13 were identified as still on hand or internally used, including 8 out of those 13 that were used to purchase annual PlayStation subscriptions for devices owned by Parks and operated as Parks activities and services offered to the community. 45 gift cards with a total value of $650 were identified for further review, given that they still needed the documentation could not be determined with what was provided. The 45 unaccounted for gift cards were identified as low-value cards, average value of $14, purchased from various merchants over 2 years between 2019 and 2021 by different custodians for multiple programs and purposes at separate sites. So there was no linkage between those cards that were unaccounted for. While the possibility of individual theft or misuse of any one card cannot be eliminated, there were no patterns of theft or fraud determined within that review. Moving on to YDSI. Excluding the gift cards identified under neighborhood services audit that were used as COVID testing incentives, keeping in mind YDSI employees were assigned under ISOQ to neighborhood services. The scope of this audit for the YDSI was limited to 6 gift card purchases, transactions totaling 27 gift cards at a value of $436 between July 2019 and July of 2021. Based on the audit, there was incomplete documentation due to administrative deficiencies. However, no gift cards were unaccounted for, and there was no evidence of theft and fraud. This concludes my report on unaccounted for gift cards identified in the prior audit reports. Each department, except for neighborhood services, has closed out its audit recommendations without finding additional gift cards unaccounted for at the time of closure. Are there any questions or concerns from committee members on this review before proceeding?
Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Thornberry. This is the report, and, sorry, this item is a report only and no motion is required. We will move on to number 7, item number 7. Agenda item number 7, report by staff and discussion for possible action regarding an update on the audit recommendations with the status of incomplete. Brian Smith, Internal Audit Section Manager, will you please give the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Smith, Internal Audit Section Manager. Twice a year, we brief the Audit Oversight Committee on incomplete audit recommendations. I'd like to begin by reviewing our audit recommendation follow-up process. Prior to the finalization of every audit report, City Management provides us with a management action plan and an estimated date of completion for each audit recommendation. These management responses are found at the back of every audit report. Upon release of an audit report, an audit recommendation is classified as not due. Once an audit recommendation's estimated date of completion passes and the recommendation has not yet been verified by an auditor as having been addressed, the classification of the recommendation is changed to incomplete. Once an audit recommendation has been verified by an auditor as having been addressed, the recommendation classification is then changed to complete. Over the past year, city departments have completed 57 audit recommendations, and we appreciate their efforts in improving internal controls here at the city. There are currently 10 recommendations that are not due and 15 recommendations that are incomplete. The incomplete recommendations are in 3 different departments, including Finance, Neighborhood Services, and Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. Here is a chart showing the number of months the audit recommendations from Finance and Neighborhood Services have been incomplete. The Finance recommendation is in purple, and the Neighborhood Services recommendations are in blue. Here is another chart showing the number of months the audit recommendations from Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs have been incomplete. Subsequent to the finalization of this chart and subsequent slides, Parks has completed 5 of these 13 recommendations. Therefore, Parks now has 8 incomplete recommendations. The recommendations whose numbers have an asterisk next to them were included in more than one of the Parks audit reports. I'd now like to review through the incomplete recommendations with you by department, and management's estimated dates of completion are noted next to each recommendation on each slide. Finance has 1 incomplete audit recommendation from our gift card audit. This recommendation is that Finance document and implement their procedures for monitoring and auditing department compliance with the gift card policy. A representative from Finance is in attendance to give you an update on their efforts to address this recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Good morning. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Audit Committee. I'm Susan Heltzley, Director of Finance. And to update you on our recommendation, we've implemented the procedures, we've documented the procedures, we have trained all the departments on the procedures so that they can go ahead and audit internally, and then they turn over their information to Finance so that we can audit it. We've asked them to do this in July and January of each year, and since we didn't train them until June, we didn't think it was fair to ask them to report in January. So they'll be reporting to us in December, or actually in January for December, and then we can close out this audit finding.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the members? Seeing none, Mr. Smith, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Smith, Internal Audit Section Manager. Neighborhood Services has 6 incomplete audit recommendations relating to the need for documenting and implementing department procedures on the handling of gift cards and improving management oversight of the gift cards. A representative from Neighborhood Services is in attendance to give you an update on their efforts to address these recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Good morning. Please introduce yourself.
Ashley Strait, Grant Programs Coordinator in the Department of Neighborhood Services. We have been working very closely with Brian Smith and Nancy Cordoza in order to develop a policy which has been approved, and we've been holding trainings and will continue to hold trainings so all department staff understand what's expected of them. And we anticipate in the next few months to have an audit from Brian and Nancy in order to make sure that our oversight is adequate.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the members? Seeing none, Mr. Smith, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Smith, Internal Audit Section Manager. Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs has a total of 8 incomplete audit recommendations from our payment collection audits at Floydland Park, West Las Vegas Arts Center, Veterans Memorial Community Center, Mirabelli Community Center, and Doolittle Community Center. This first slide shows the incomplete recommendations from our audit of payment collections at Floydland Park. The first recommendation shown on this slide was completed this past week. The remaining 2 recommendations address the need for management to complete periodic cash handling audits at the Floydland Gatehouse and the need for changing the locks to the gatehouse when employees fail to return their keys upon separation from the city. On the next slide, there's 1 incomplete recommendation from the West Las Vegas Arts Center payment collections audit requesting that management document and implement procedures for the completion of periodic cash handling audits at this site. Next slide is Veterans Memorial Community Center. Recommendations 2.1 and 3.1 shown on this slide from the payment collection audit of Veterans Memorial Community Center were completed this past week. The remaining recommendation, number 1.1, is for management to document and implement procedures for the completion of periodic cash handling audits at this site. Recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 shown on this slide from the payment collection audit of Mirabelli Community Center were completed this past week. There are 3 remaining incomplete recommendations for Mirabelli, including number 1.1 on this slide, which is for management to document and implement procedures for the completion of periodic cash handling audits at this site. In addition, there are 2 incomplete recommendations shown on this slide requesting that management document and implement procedures requiring that the park system administrators be notified when parks employees separate from employment or transfer to another city department, and that the appropriateness of system access permissions be reviewed periodically. There is 1 incomplete recommendation for the Doolittle Community Center. This recommendation is that management document and implement procedures for the completion of periodic cash handling audits at this site. That concludes my report on the incomplete audit recommendations. A representative from Parks, Recreation, Cultural Affairs is in attendance to provide you with with an update on their department's efforts to address this recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We will now hear from the representative. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Maggie Plaster. I'm the Acting Director of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. And I believe that for the 2 remaining incomplete recommendations for Floydland Park, that we're in the process. We just haven't been able to finalize that with the auditor's office, so we didn't get it done in enough time. And for the ones related to our community centers, we have completed many of the audits, but again, haven't had that information to the auditor's office in enough time for them to complete these recommendations.
Thank you. Do I have any questions from the members? All right. May I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Yes. Is that your motion? There's a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Please post. The motion carries. We'll move on to item number 8. Agenda item number 8, report by staff regarding current audits. Brian Smith, Internal Audit Section Manager, will you give a report? Please go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Smith, Internal Audit Section Manager. Our office is currently involved in the audits of payment collections at the parking office and parking at special events. Our objectives in completing these audits are to verify that customer payments are receipted, recorded, and deposited in accordance with the department's and the city's cash handling policies and procedures, that funds they're properly secured, and that system access permissions assigned to employees are appropriate for their job responsibilities. We are also completing an audit of IT assets hardware. That concludes my report. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, this item is for report only and no motion is required. We'll move on to item number 9. Agenda item number 9, discussion regarding topics for future agenda items. Comments made during this portion of the agenda by individual members shall refer solely to proposals for future agenda items, and any discussion shall be limited to whether or not such proposed items are within the purview of the committee and/or whether such proposed items shall be placed on a future agenda. No discussion regarding the substance of any such proposed topic shall occur, and no action shall be taken. Does anyone have suggestions regarding future agenda item topics? Okay, we'll move on to item number 10. Agenda item number 10 is citizens' participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the committee. No subject may be acted upon by the committee unless that subject is on the agenda and is scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion on any single subject, as well as the amount of any time any single speaker is allowed, may be limited. Is there anyone wishing to be heard by this time, at this time? Seeing none, I'll close citizens' participation and we'll move on to item number 11. Agenda item number 11, adjournment. The next Audit Oversight Committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 8th, 2024, and with that, this meeting is adjourned.